Alright everyone, welcome back to You Have the Right to Remain Fat with commentary. We are looking at chapter 9, I think. We only have this and I think 2 more chapters after this and then we're done with this book. The title of this chapter is In the Future, I'm Fat. I write very good personal ads. I know that the age of the ad has largely come and gone, but I've always loved the idea that my first interaction with someone was linguistic rather than visual. In the realm of digital romance, language is used in a very pragmatic, outcome driven way. People tend to focus on statistics, measurements, desires, goals, and hobbies. My ads are less like lists and more like full length confessional manifestos. Which just seems weird to me. That sounds, one, intense, and two, if that's what you want to do with your money to put a personal ad out, I guess go ahead, but Virgie really seems to have some sort of. She just has some issues with socialization and appropriate behavior. All of the distance and suspicion I convey while on dates is counterbalanced by the intimate nature of what I've written before the date, which seems weird to me. Like, why would you put distance and act like you're suspicious or be suspicious? I'm not sure what that means on the date just to counterbalance. It seems weird. It seems like you're playing fucking games to me. Men in San Francisco, I've found, tend to be very intrigued by my ads. I've noticed that I've developed a regional voice because when I place the same ad when I'm traveling, I often get emails that rhetorically pose questions like, "What's wrong with you?" My ads detail not only where I live and what I like, but also my passion for nail polish, jasmine and gardenias, tiramisu and cheesecake, particular scents I've found evocative of particular times, and the way my face looks in the morning. The fact that I am incapable of actual intimacy, but am very invested in the quickly won, shallow intimacy that can only be had between strangers who like the idea of having sex with each other, probably once. Girl, you sound like a hot mess, is what you sound like. I had written one such ad in 2014 and attracted a very eager doctor dude. After exchanging a few emails, he asked for permission to aggressively pursue me. He sounded like a psychopath, and so naturally I was interested. So it seems like she's a little self-aware of her bad taste in men, but she leans into it pretty hard. Like, what goes on in Virgie's head when she makes the decision she does? It's the one thing that I want to pick her brain on. I've noticed men in traditional professions are skittish about sharing what exactly they do. So it wasn't until we were at this Peruvian restaurant chewing on tiny crispy octopus tentacles near the Haight that he divulged that he was an obesity researcher. He followed this up quickly with telling me that he was a big fan of my work. The whole thing was very confusing. Thankfully, more than connection, I love a deeply alienating weirdo who has watched YouTube videos I made in my bedroom about how to turn garden accents into hair accessories, or how to slutify any outfit with only scissors and the will to release any claim to respectability. I'm not sure exactly what kept me on that date. Perhaps it was that I wasn't woke enough to see what he represented. Perhaps I liked what he represented. Perhaps I was willing to give him a pass for pathologizing people like me because he was fat too. He had an interesting story. He said he had always identified as an overeater. He said he liked food a lot and ate frequently and had always been thin. All of a sudden, at around 35, something kind of unexpected happened. His behavior didn't change, but for reasons he couldn't quite grasp, he went from being a thin person to being a fat one. Chances are, I'm curious if since he's a doctor, around 35, if we take into account bachelor's degree, medical school, residency, and then his first position where he's kind of working up the ranks to eventually get maybe a little bit more responsibility, I'm guessing his habits have changed. Maybe he's probably even hit more of an equilibrium in his life. And so, or maybe he's less active than he was before because he was constantly running around doing stuff. Maybe he's eating more and just doesn't realize it because he had to skip meals before working as a resident or in medical school because he was so focused on studying he forgot to eat. Maybe he doesn't realize the differences that in his behavior, but that doesn't mean that he has maintained the same exact thing and only now it's changing. It's just unlikely. On the date, he asked me, "Wouldn't your life be easier, though, if you were thin?" The answer to this question is simple. No. My life wouldn't be easier if I were thin. My life would be easier if this culture wasn't obsessed with oppressing me because I'm fat. Oh, for fuck's sake. The solution to a problem like bigotry is not to do everything in our power to accommodate the bigotry. It is to get rid of the bigotry. In the dreams I have of my future, I am fat. This simple fact was hard won. For years and years, I could not accept the possibility that I would be fat forever. I had internalized fat phobia so deeply that I believed my life wasn't worth living if I wasn't going to someday transform into a thin person. I didn't think I deserved to have good things because I was fat. Like many women, I had a wardrobe filled with clothes that didn't fit me. I didn't let anyone take photos of me. I cut up the pictures of me that did end up surfacing. This inability to see yourself in the future is a product of believing there is no room for you in the culture that surrounds you. The future, it turns out, is a lot about the present. The allure of diet culture is a life lived in the future. The future is a hermetically sealed unreality that possesses none of the limits or the potential magic of the present. Okay, here's the thing, because I'm a person that largely lives in the future. Not just in regards to weight, but in regards to potential career options, in regards to building up skills to certain levels. A lot of the actions that I take are for the future, almost to the point of toxicity. Sometimes even to the point of toxicity. Sometimes to the point where I can't appreciate anything in the current present moment because I'm so preoccupied with the future. But I don't think that the answer is to live entirely in the present. Life requires you to think about the future some. And that is true for every prospect of life. You should think about the future in terms of finances to make sure you have enough retirement. You should think about the future in terms of your career to make sure that you're going to end up in a place that makes you happy or that you are earning the type of money that you want to earn. You need to think about the future in terms of hobbies that you want to pursue and making sure you carve out time for those. Because if you don't plan in the future and you do it just based on what you feel like, it's very easy to let chores or other life necessities prevent you from doing that, and then you end up feeling rather unfulfilled. You need to be able to carve out time for the things that are important to you, and thinking in the future is part of that. Not everyone, very few people, except for the supremely selfish, at least in my experience, are capable of living so fully in the present that they disregard the future. And I think that that is just as toxic as living entirely in the future. While I think there definitely needs to be a balance, I don't think Virgie's lionizing of the present is a great mindset to have. The present is messy, sweaty, filled with longing and sometimes anger and sometimes sadness. The present holds your body in all the imperfection that makes it real. The future represents possibility to many. My obsession with my thin future was about disembodiment. It was about dissociating completely from myself, the present, and my body. In the narrative I created about the future, I was the author of my life. I deeply longed to feel that sense of ownership, but I didn't know how to access it because I had been emotionally battered so severely by a fat-hating, woman-hating culture. For fuck's sake. That just... She almost has something there, and then she, makes a hard right turn into, at the very least, reductionism, but this feels a little bit more like just creating a situation where she is a victim. I had felt that I could earn the authorship through compliance. I couldn't bear the reality that I was living in, so I jettisoned my emotional self out of the present and into another time. It was a beautiful time filled with all the things I wanted most, which I felt I didn't deserve because I wasn't in a good body. I violently deleted myself from the story by always focusing on the anesthetized future filled with other people who also knew how to conform successfully. I never thought of those people as good or bad. I thought of them as real and my fat self as an in-between space I was temporarily occupying. I became complicit with them in the destruction of my past and all that my failure represented. My undisciplined body, my lack of feminine grace, my inability to be white enough, my rage, and my inability to assimilate completely into American culture. I didn't think of it that way back then, but that was the truth of it. I conceptualized that in my future I would be free because I would be thin, but I was wrong. In the future I imagined, it's not that I was free. Far from it. Any future that doesn't center the eradication of oppression and collective freedom is not a future worth imagining. In that future, I imagined I was no longer subject to fat phobia because I was thin, but I didn't realize that it wasn't fat phobia that had gone away. There was no me. There was no me. So, this is another, because language, we talk about how language is powerful, but this is, even self-talk is powerful. If you say there being a thin you in the future means that there is no you, you are over-identifying yourself with your weight. You view your weight as inseparable from yourself, which is an issue. It's like viewing your hair color as inseparable from yourself. If you want to keep your hair color, that's fine. I've never dyed my hair. I've thought about it, but I haven't dyed my hair because I don't want the upkeep of it. That doesn't mean I couldn't change it if I needed to. Is it annoying? Sure, the upkeep would be annoying. If, for whatever reason, dyeing my hair would prevent future illness or help moderate current illness, I would dye my hair. It's just, that's an over pairing of yourself, your identity as a person, with a rather changeable factor in yourself and something so simple as your weight. The fantasy of and longing for a thin body became a way of making the oppression that was breaking my heart, breaking me, more bearable. It didn't occur to me that there was anything wrong with the idea that anyone, let alone an entire culture, would bully me into believing there was something fundamentally wrong with me and that I needed to change it. It never occurred to me that the standard of normal to which I was subscribing was violent, and always had been. I thought I could earn my way out of oppression, but I realized that nothing is farther from the truth. I had lost sight of my right to freedom and my right to live a life free from oppression. I had lost sight that those things were my born right. I think you mean your birthright. You cannot earn freedom through conformity. You cannot buy your way in, and we can only claim it when we recognize it as already ours. So much, she talks about being freedom from an oppressed culture, but here's the thing, so much of the fat acceptance oppression isn't really oppression. It's that they feel excluded from certain things. And I understand that. That can suck. 100%. But everyone is kind of excluded from something. There are some things where it's not fair, where others are excluded, and this is because of things about themselves that they 100% cannot change. But fatness is not one of those things. Alright? And sometimes life is just unfair. There are short people that will never ride a roller coaster because they're just too short. And it sucks. And I'm not going to say it doesn't suck, but that's life. That's just life sometimes. It sucks. Life is unfair. Welcome to the world. That doesn't mean that you are being oppressed. Now, if you were prevented from doing legitimate things for your, like if you were banned from grocery stores or something because of your weight, that would be a serious issue. We've even seen some level of legitimacy when we are looking at doctors not performing certain tests on people because of their weight, even if that test would be low risk. Or there are doctors that just completely write off patients because of their weight, and that's not right either. And it's not right for anyone to harass fat people at all. It's not right. But that doesn't mean that someone working out so that way they won't be fat. That doesn't mean that's oppression against you. That doesn't mean that stores that don't carry up to a size 30 is an oppression against you. These are the issues with the fat acceptance movement, is that, and Virgie is, I feel like, a fantastic poster child for the issues of the fat acceptance movement. So that's the end of the chapter. Couple things. One thing on the job front. I got offered an interview, but I turned it down because it was at a high school. And I've never taught high school. And from what I understand, high school kids are the most likely to punch you in the face when they get really upset. A couple of substitute teachers I've talked to talked about that. And thing is, that alone would not bother me so much. I'd be kind of prepared for the interaction of that, and I would learn to adapt, and it is what it is. But high school curriculum is very different from middle or elementary school curriculum in terms of English as a second language, which is part of what I was offered. Well, not offered, not in as in the job, but just offered an interview. And there is no set curriculum, which means I would have to make it, and I don't know for high school. That's very difficult. It's a very different turn because it's all about preparing kids for the workforce and everyday life, which is different from the conceptual grammar portion that we try to teach kids in elementary and middle school. And I just did not feel capable, so I turned it down. Kind of glad I did too, because it was a really early start time, and then on a good day where I was going to work would have been 45 minutes away. But something really cool was that I found out that I'm technically qualified to teach English 101 class at a community college, which I would be so fucking psyched for. I actually have this whole kind of idea for a curriculum in my head around that, because that was actually something that I wanted to do about 8 years ago when I was going to school, and I didn't get my master's degree in English, so I didn't think I would ever be a teacher, but they actually accepted master's in education for that, which I have now. So I applied. The only downside is I don't have experience teaching actual college age students, but what's really cool about college is that you can have something that says shit in it, and it's not going to be like 100% nope that has to be tossed out, even if it's a good example. Something else too was that there was a college level class for anime, the history of anime and manga, and you only needed a bachelor's degree for it. So I was like, well, fuck yeah, here, I will do that. In the form of like Japanese woodblock prints ukiyo-e, and that was built upon into the manga that we see like, I can just go on, you guys. So I'm giving you highlights of what my class would be. There's so much more that I could cover. So there's that. Started reading Ancient Magus Bride again, and my god, that's a fucking good manga series. I love that. I'm watching a bit more of The Wallflower on Hulu, and I gotta say, The Wallflower had a terrible dub. I watch the dubs because I like to crochet while I watch anime, and it's a bad dub, and I'm kind of not caring for the series as a whole as much as I did when I was 14. As for weight, I chose not to weigh myself this week because I fucked up on my diet. Last weekend, I made this killer chocolate cake with strawberry frosting, and it was fucking delicious, and I ate entirely too much of it. So I'm gonna get back on track this week. I need to stop falling off track and get back on it. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Let me know how you guys are doing. What are you doing this week? What did you do last week? How have you been on your plans? It's been a while since I had to check in with y'all. I really want to hear it. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.